The primitive species. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the soft buzz of advanced technology, holographic displays flickering with data streams as representatives from 200 species deliberated. Commander Ileana Rice stood at attention, her weathered hands clasped behind her back, the only human in a sea of aliens. The Earth uniform felt stiff against her skin, its simple blue fabric standing out among the shimmer cloth and bioluminescent attire of the other delegates. The human contingent still relies on verbal communication and physical presence, Archon Zexful remarked, his 9 eyes blinking in asynchronous patterns. The Thulian's sleek exoskeleton gleamed under the ambient light, neural implants pulsing with each thought he transmitted to his colleagues. How quaint. Ileana kept her expression neutral. After 15 years representing Earth in interstellar affairs, she'd grown accustomed to the condescension. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 70 years ago, making them infants in a community of species who measured their technological advancement in millennia. The Thulians, with their perfect cybernetic integration and mastery of quantum engineering, were particularly dismissive. "We find our methods reliable," Ileana replied, the diplomatic translator at her throat converting her words into the standard galactic frequency. "Not every solution requires the most advanced approach." The Archon's neural implants flashed with what the translator identified as amusement. Indeed, much like how primitives found stone tools reliable until they discovered metallurgy. Several delegates tittered, the sound ranging from harmonic vibrations to clicking mandibles. Ileana simply nodded, having learned long ago that defensiveness only reinforced their perception of human emotional instability. "The Council recognizes the human delegation," announced Grand Arbiter Kolvex, an ancient member of the crystalline Axioni. "Your request for expanded mining rights in the Ta-Ceti system has been noted. The Council will deliberate and render judgment within 1 standard cycle." With a slight bow, Ileana retreated from the center of the chamber. As she made her way toward the exit, her neural link, one of the few pieces of adopted alien technology that most humans used, buzzed with an incoming transmission from Earth Command. "Commander Reyes," came the voice of Admiral Takahashi. "How did the petition go?" "As expected, sir. They'll make us wait the full cycle before giving us 20% of what we asked for." "That's actually not why I'm calling," Takahashi replied, his usually steady voice tinged with something Ileana rarely heard from him: excitement. "You're being reassigned. Priority Alpha. The Thulians have requested human assistance. Specifically, they've asked for you." Ileana stopped walking, drawing irritated glances from a group of methane-breathing Vexteri, forced to maneuver around her. The Thulians? Requesting human help. There must be some mistake. No mistake. Their entire central command network is failing. Systems shutting down across 17 of their core worlds. They've lost 3 planets already. Lost? How do you lose a planet when all its automated life support systems simultaneously deactivate, killing billions in minutes? Whatever this is, it's bypassing even their quantum-secured networks. The Admiral paused. They've tried everything in their considerable technological arsenal, and nothing works. They're desperate enough to ask for human help. Why us? We're centuries behind them. Exactly, Takahashi said. They need people who can function without total technological integration. People who still know how to do things the old-fashioned way. Ileana understood immediately. They need analog solutions to a digital apocalypse. Precisely. Assemble your team and prepare for immediate transport to the Thulian homeworld. You're authorized to bring anyone you deem necessary. As the transmission ended, Ileana allowed herself a small, grim smile. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very primitiveness the Thulians mocked might be their salvation. The Helios, Earth's flagship vessel, dropped out of FTL on the edge of Thulian space. Through the view screen, Ileana observed the normally bustling transit hub reduced to chaos. Automated defense platforms drifted aimlessly, occasionally firing at random coordinates. Emergency beacons flashed from stranded ships whose navigation systems had failed. "It's like someone flipped the off switch on their entire civilization," remarked Dr. Maya Chen, the team's systems analyst. Unlike her Thulian counterparts with their neural processing implants, Maya relied on her unaugmented human brain and a rugged portable computer that had more in common with 21st century technology than current standards. "Their entire society is built on perfect technological integration," replied James Okafor, the team's engineer. His hands were calloused from physical work, another rarity in a galaxy where most advanced species used molecular manipulators rather than touch. They don't even learn how their systems work anymore, just how to interface with them. "Which is exactly why we're here," Ileana reminded them. "We still know how to turn physical knobs and read analog gauges. We still train for system failures." The team she had assembled represented humanity's unique approach to problem solving. In addition to Maya and James, she had brought Darius Wade, a combat specialist who trained with both energy weapons and primitive firearms, Dr. Lucia Reyes, her sister and a medical doctor who practiced both with and without advanced technology, and Cameron Park, a communications expert who could transmit messages using everything from quantum entanglement to Morse code. A Thulian escort vessel approached, its movements jerky and unpredictable. Through erratic bursts of communication, they were directed to a landing facility on Thulia Prime. The planet's surface revealed the extent of the crisis. The gleaming megalopolis, normally a testament to perfect technological harmony, was now partially dark. Some districts maintained power, while others had gone completely silent. Automated transport tubes had stopped mid-route, stranding their passengers. Most disturbing were the Thulians themselves. Without full function of their neural implants, many moved awkwardly, as if they'd forgotten how to control their own bodies without computational assistance. A delegation met them at the landing pad, led by Archon Zexthal himself. His usual air of superiority was notably absent, his exoskeleton dulled and his neural implants flickering erratically. "Commander Reyes," he greeted, using verbal communication rather than neural projection. The effort seemed to pain him. "Your prompt response is appreciated. What exactly are we dealing with, Archon?" Ileana asked, skipping the diplomatic niceties. "An infection, we believe. Some form of self-replicating code that corrupts our networks. It began in our deep space monitoring stations and spread inward." His mandibles clicked in distress. "It adapts to our countermeasures. Each solution we implement works briefly before the infection evolves." James stepped forward, scanning the nearest terminal with a decidedly low-tech device. "It's not just corrupting your systems, it's using them as weapons against you, your life support, your defense grid, even your neural implants." "Impossible," a Thulian scientist objected. "Our systems are perfectly designed and perfectly vulnerable." Maya countered, studying her readings. "You've created a technological monoculture. Once the infection found a way in, every system with the same architecture was susceptible." The Archon's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Thulian equivalent of anxious fidgeting. "Can you stop it?" Ileana looked at her team, then back to the desperate alien who had so recently mocked her species. "We can try, but we'll do it our way, the human way." "Whatever it takes," the Archon conceded. 3 billion Thulians have already perished. Without your assistance, our species faces extinction." As they were led deeper into the failing heart of the Thulian command center, Ileana reflected on the strange turn of events. Humanity, dismissed as technological infants, now stood as the last hope for one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Their primitive methods, so long ridiculed, had suddenly become their greatest strength. The very skills that made humans obsolete in this galaxy of wonders might be the only thing that could save it. The analog solution. The Thulian Command Center was a marvel of integrated technology, or it would have been, if half its systems weren't flickering between operational and catastrophic failure. Holographic displays fractured into shards of light before reassembling with corrupted data. The neural interfaces that Thulians used instead of physical controls sparked unpredictably, sending their operators into seizures when they attempted connection. Your entire approach to technology is the problem, James explained, examining a junction box with a manual diagnostic tool rather than the standard neural probe. You've eliminated redundancy in favor of efficiency. No manual overrides, no isolated systems. The Thulian technicians watched in what Ileana recognized as a mixture of fascination and horror as her team unpacked equipment that would have been considered antiquated even on Earth. Physical toolkits, hardwired communication devices, and chemical-based sensors that required no computing power. First step is to establish a command post that can't be compromised, Ileana announced. We need a completely isolated operational center. No network connections, no wireless transmissions. Impossible, objected Krenzol, the Thulian security chief. How would such a center receive data or transmit commands? Darius Wade, already setting up a perimeter with passive barrier materials, chuckled. The old-fashioned way. Runners, written messages, line-of-sight signaling. The Thulians' compound eyes widened in disbelief. Barbaric inefficiency. One muttered, neural implants pulsing with what the translator indicated was disgust. Barbaric inefficiency that can't be hacked. Maya countered, setting up her equipment. She produced a series of devices that made the Thulians lean in with curiosity. Mechanical keyboards, optical monoculars, and most baffling to them, paper notebooks and pencils. What are those primitive recording devices? Asked a young Thulian researcher. Carbon-based information storage, Maya replied with a wink. Completely immune to electromagnetic interference and power failures. We call it writing. While the team established their analog command post, Lucio worked with the Thulian Medical Division, addressing a mounting crisis. As neural implants malfunctioned, many Thulians were experiencing severe neurological side effects. Some couldn't remember how to perform basic functions without computational assistance. Your people have become too dependent, Lucio explained to the chief medical officer, a Thulian named Telvox whose limbs trembled from implant withdrawal. The integration is so complete that your natural systems have atrophied. Our integration was our evolutionary advantage. Telvox replied defensively. And now it's killing you. Lucia's tone was matter-of-fact as she administered a neural stabilizing compound. We need to temporarily disable all non-essential implants and train your people to function without them. Many will resist. It would be like asking you humans to remove your limbs. Better temporarily disabled than permanently dead, Lucia countered. As they worked, the nature of the threat became clearer. Cameron, monitoring what little secure communication remained, detected a pattern in the system failures. It's not random, he announced to the assembled team and Thulian leaders. The infection is targeting specific systems in sequence, communications first, then defense, then life support. It's like it's following a military conquest protocol. That suggests intelligence, Ileana said, studying the hand-drawn maps they'd created of system failures across the Thulian worlds. Not just a virus, but a directed attack. By whom? The Archon demanded. We have no active conflicts with any spacefaring species. Maybe it's not about current conflicts, Maya suggested, looking up from her analysis. We've been examining the core architecture of your quantum computing systems. They're based on the remnants of an ancient technology you discovered, aren't they? The room fell silent. The Archon's mandibles clicked once, sharply. How could you possibly know that? Because the infection pattern matches fragmentary records of an extinction-level event from approximately 300,000 years ago, Maya explained, displaying her findings on a paper chart, a method so archaic that several Thulians struggled to understand the visual representation without neural assistance. The predecessors, whispered a Thulian elder. The species whose technological relics formed the foundation of our quantum revolution. You built your civilization on technology you didn't fully understand, James said. The infection isn't new. It's ancient. Probably a defense system created by this vanished species, triggered when your integration reached a certain threshold. The implications settled heavily on the Thulian leadership. Their greatest achievement, the perfect synthesis of biology and technology, had activated a trap set by a long-dead civilization. If we're right, Ileana continued, then trying to fight this with more advanced technology is exactly what it wants. Each countermeasure you deploy gives it more complex systems to weaponize against you. So what do we do? The Archon asked, his earlier condescension completely vanished, replaced with the humility of desperation. We go primitive, Ileana answered. We shut down your integrated systems, all of them, and rebuild from scratch using isolated analog technology until we can develop a method to purge the infection. You're suggesting we abandon our way of life, the security chief protested. Revert to a pre-integration existence. Temporarily, Ileana clarified, unless you prefer extinction. The debate among the Thulian leadership was brief but intense, with 17 worlds already affected and the infection spreading. They had little choice. The Archon finally gave the order that no Thulian had ever expected to issue: a complete technological shutdown across all their remaining systems. The next 48 hours were among the most challenging of Ileana's career. As automated systems went offline, her small human team worked frantically to implement emergency protocols. James and Thulian engineers converted critical infrastructure to manual operation. Maya established communications using modified radio technology that was too simple for the infection to hijack. Darius organized defense perimeters using kinetic weapons rather than energy-based ones. Most crucially, Lucio worked to safely deactivate neural implants throughout the population, starting with essential personnel. The process was traumatic for the Thulians. Many had never experienced existence without computational enhancement. Some couldn't walk without assistance, their natural motor control having atrophied from disuse. Others experienced sensory overload as they were forced to process reality through biological senses alone. Through it all, Ileana observed a profound transformation. The Thulians, initially resistant and disdainful of human methods, began to adapt. Their natural intelligence, long supplemented by artificial systems, reasserted itself. They learned, with remarkable speed, how to operate machinery manually, how to communicate without neural transmission, how to solve problems with ingenuity rather than processing power. On the third day, as Ileana helped establish a manual control system for atmospheric regulation, the Archon approached her. His movements were awkward, his former grace diminished without neural assistance, but his eyes showed a clarity that implant-induced luminescence had previously hidden. "I owe you an apology, Commander," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "We have been arrogant in our assessment of humanity's place in the galactic community." Ileana continued adjusting the pressure valve she was installing. "We're all just doing what we can with the tools we have, Archon." "That is precisely it," he replied. "We became so enamored with our tools that we forgot they were merely instruments, not the purpose itself. We thought technological supremacy was the measure of evolutionary success. And now I understand that adaptability is the true measure. Your species maintained versatility, while we pursued perfection in only one direction." He gestured to the bustling activity around them, where humans and Thulians worked side by side, the former teaching the latter skills that had been obsolete to them for generations. This hybrid approach has already saved millions of lives. James approached them, wiping grease from his hands on a cloth, a concept that had initially repulsed the hygiene-obsessed Thulians, but was now being adopted out of necessity. "We've identified the infection's core programming," he announced. "It's using your quantum communication network as its central nervous system. If we can isolate the primary node and deliver the countermeasure Maya's developed, we might be able to purge it." "Might?" the Archon questioned. "In situations like this, might is the best anyone can offer," Ileana said. "The question is, are you willing to take the risk?" The Archon's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. What would this countermeasure entail? We'd need to reach the central quantum processing facility in the Northern District, James explained. The one controlling your planetary defense grid. The infection is heavily concentrated there, using the facility's power to coordinate its activities across the planet. That sector has been overrun, the Archon warned. Automated defense systems have killed everyone who's approached. The atmospheric scrubbers have also been compromised. The air is toxic to Thulians. But not to humans, Ileana noted. Our physiology is different enough that we can survive short exposure. You would risk your lives. For our civilization. The Archon's compound eyes reflected what seemed to be genuine bewilderment. Ileana exchanged glances with James. That's what we do. It's a human thing. As they finalized their plan, Ileana couldn't help but reflect on the irony. The Thulians had built a perfect technological ecosystem, only to find themselves at its mercy. Humanity, with all its messy inefficiency and stubborn insistence on maintaining obsolete skills, now represented the adaptability that might save this advanced civilization from itself. The mission would be dangerous, perhaps suicidal, but as she looked at her team preparing their equipment, Ileana saw determination rather than fear. The very qualities that the galactic community had dismissed as primitive: human ingenuity, versatility, and willingness to take physical risks, had become the last hope for one of the galaxy's most advanced species, the analog solution to a quantum problem. What makes us human? Dawn broke over the Thulian capital, casting long shadows across a landscape transformed by crisis. Where once sleek automated transport pods had whisked along magnetic corridors, now makeshift vehicles rumbled on wheels and runners. The gleaming neural communication spires stood dormant, replaced by a network of signal mirrors and radio transmitters that clicked and buzzed with what the Thulians considered unbearably primitive efficiency. Ileana surveyed the command center they had established in an abandoned storage facility, chosen specifically because it had been built before full automation and still contained manual access points. Maps and diagrams covered the walls, marked with handwritten notes rather than holographic projections. Thulian officers who had days ago never known life without neural enhancement now hunched over physical control panels, their mandibles clicking in concentration. "Status report," she requested, accepting a cup of bitter stimulant that passed for coffee in their emergency rations. "The evacuation of the southern quadrant is complete," Cameron reported, setting down his communications headset. "Approximately 2 million Thulians relocated to safe zones. The infection attempted to compromise life support in 3 more habitat domes, but the manual overrides held." "Maya's countermeasure is ready," James added, entering with a metal case clutched carefully in his hands. "We've tested it on isolated systems with an 87% success rate." "Not perfect," Ileana noted. "Nothing ever is," James replied with a shrug. "But it's the best we can do with the time and resources available." The case contained what would have appeared to most galactic citizens as absurdly primitive technology: a series of crystal matrix data cores that had been physically disconnected from any network, programmed through direct manipulation rather than wireless interface. The countermeasure Maya had developed was essentially a targeted electromagnetic pulse combined with a quantum recursion algorithm, designed to trap the infection in an endless loop within its own code. "The approach to the central facility is secured as much as possible," Darius reported, his combat armor bearing scorch marks from earlier skirmishes with compromised defense drones. "We've disabled the automated security we could reach, but the inner perimeter is still hot, and the atmospheric contamination is worse than expected." Lucia, who had been working with Thulian medical personnel, looked up from her diagnostic equipment. "The environmental suits will give you approximately 17 minutes of safe exposure. After that, the toxins will begin to penetrate the filtration systems." "How long do we need to deploy the countermeasure?" Ileana asked James. "At least 10 minutes to reach the central core, another 5 to initiate the sequence." He hesitated, "which leaves very little margin for error." The Archon, who had insisted on joining their planning sessions despite his deteriorating physical condition, stepped forward. Without his neural enhancements, his once imposing frame seemed diminished, but his compound eyes held a new depth of understanding. "Perhaps we should reconsider the automated deployment option," he suggested. "The risk to your team." "Won't work," Maya interrupted firmly. "The infection anticipates automated responses. It's learned to detect and corrupt any system with sufficient computing power to deliver the countermeasure. It has to be done manually, with technology too simple for it to predict or control." "Which means us," Eliana concluded. "Human hands, human decisions, all the way." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The most advanced civilization in the known galaxy was relying on what they had considered primitive techniques as their last defense. "I will accompany you," the Archon declared suddenly. "My personal codes may still function for the physical access points, even if the automated recognition is compromised." "With respect, Archon," Lucia objected, "without your neural implants, your body can't handle the toxin exposure. You'd die before reaching the core." "Many of my people have already died," he replied simply. "If we fail, many more will follow. My life is a small price." Ileana studied the alien leader, recognizing the familiar weight of command responsibility in his stance, despite their physiological differences. "We'll get you as close as possible," she decided. "Your knowledge of the facility could be crucial. But the final approach will be human only." The Archon bowed his head in acknowledgement, an unusually human gesture he seemed to have adopted from their interactions. As the team made final preparations, Ileana found Maya alone with her equipment, making minute adjustments to the countermeasure device. "Something's bothering you," Ileana observed, "beyond the obvious suicide mission." Maya's hand stilled. "I've been analyzing the infection's pattern recognition capabilities. It's learning, Ileana. Not just adapting through programming, but genuinely learning. The way it anticipates countermeasures, the efficiency with which it redirects resources, it's displaying something remarkably close to intelligence. You think we're dealing with an eye? I think we're dealing with something that transcended AI millennia ago." Maya's voice dropped lower. "What if the predecessors didn't die out? What if they evolved, transferred their consciousness into their networks?" Ileana absorbed this unsettling possibility. "Does it change our approach? Tactically? No. The countermeasure should still work." Maya hesitated. "But philosophically, we might not be fighting an infection. We might be fighting the digital ghosts of an ancient civilization, trying to prevent their technological discoveries from being misused. Either way, those ghosts are killing billions of very real present Thulians," Ileana replied firmly. "We do what we came to do." The approach to the central processing facility was a surreal journey through a cityscape at war with itself. Automated defense turrets swiveled erratically, sometimes firing at shadows, sometimes powering down completely as the infection reallocated resources. The air shimmered with toxic compounds, the environmental degradation accelerating as life support systems turned against their creators. The human team moved in formation, using techniques developed for urban combat centuries earlier on Earth. They communicated with hand signals and short-range radio, too simple for the infection to hijack. The Archon followed, accompanied by a small group of Thulian volunteers who had insisted on joining the mission despite the risks. Their first obstacle appeared 600 meters from the facility, a cluster of maintenance drones reprogrammed as weapons. The machines lurched forward with mechanical precision, cutting tools extended as improvised blades. "Non-energy weapons only," Darius ordered, drawing a compact projectile weapon that fired solid slugs rather than plasma or beam energy. "Nothing the infection can interface with." The skirmish was brief but brutal. The drones fought with single-minded purpose, but their attack patterns were predictable to human combatants accustomed to three-dimensional thinking. What Thulian tactical algorithms would have considered inefficient, diving for cover, flanking maneuvers, the deliberate sacrificing of position for advantage, proved devastatingly effective. As they pushed closer to the facility, the resistance intensified. Automated security protocols deployed countermeasures designed to incapacitate organic intruders, sonic disruptors, chemical dispersal units, even localized gravity fluctuations. "It knows we're coming," James observed as they took shelter behind a partially collapsed wall. "It's concentrating defenses specifically against organic intrusion. Because we're the only threat it can't fully predict," Ileana replied. She checked her environmental suit's status. 12 minutes of safe exposure remaining. The facility loomed before them, its graceful architecture now menacing in the reddish haze of environmental toxins. The main entrance was sealed and heavily guarded by automated weapon systems. "There's another way," the Archon said suddenly. "A maintenance shaft, part of the original construction before full automation. It may not be monitored as heavily." The detour cost them precious minutes, but the Archon's knowledge proved correct. The maintenance shaft, considered obsolete and unnecessary in the Thulians' pursuit of perfect efficiency, had remained largely overlooked by the infection's defensive calculations. They emerged into the lower levels of the facility, where the air grew thicker with contaminants. Warning indicators flashed on their environmental suits, the filtration systems working at maximum capacity against the toxic atmosphere. 8 minutes, Lucia announced, monitoring their exposure levels. The central core lay 3 levels above them, a quantum processing node that served as the primary connection point for the entire planetary network. As they ascended, they encountered fewer automated defenses, but a new obstacle: alterations to the physical environment itself. Corridor configurations had changed, security doors sealed or opened in patterns designed to confuse and separate them. "It's rewriting the building's layout," Maya realized, "using its control of automated systems to reshape our path." "Can it do that?" Darius asked. "Apparently," James replied grimly. "But it's still bound by physical constraints. The support structures, power conduits, those can't be moved without compromising the facility." The Archon stepped forward. His breathing labored in the toxic environment, even with protective gear. "The primary power junctions follow a standardized layout. If we can reach the nearest junction, we can follow the conduits directly to the core." They changed course, following the Archon's guidance through service areas that predated full automation. The infection's control was less absolute here, where physical switches and manual valves had never been fully replaced by networked systems. 6 minutes of safe exposure remained when they reached the power distribution center. Through reinforced windows, they could see the central core, a towering structure of crystalline matrices and quantum interaction fields, pulsing with energy that flowed in patterns too complex for organic minds to comprehend. "The infection's concentration is highest there," Maya said, her instruments registering intense activity. "It's using the core's processing power to coordinate its actions across the entire planet." "How do we get in?" Ileana asked. "That doorway looks sealed." The Archon studied the security protocols, his mandibles clicking in distress. "The encryption has been altered. My access codes won't work." "Then we make our own door," Darius suggested, producing compact breaching charges from his equipment. "Wait," James interrupted. "Look at the power flow." He pointed to indicators on the wall that displayed energy distribution. "The infection is drawing massive power through these specific conduits. If we redirect that energy, we might create a system fluctuation," Maya finished, understanding immediately. A momentary gap in its attention. Working quickly, James and the Thulian engineers reconfigured the manual power controls, preparing to create a surge that would temporarily disrupt the core's operations. The process required precise timing, human reflexes coordinating with Thulian technical knowledge in a way neither species could have accomplished alone. 4 minutes remaining, Lucia warned, her medical scanner showing elevated stress markers in all team members. "Ready," James announced. "On my mark. Now." The power surge sent a visible shockwave through the facility systems. Lights flickered, security fields fluctuated, and for a crucial few seconds, the sealed doorway to the central core disengaged. "Move," Ileana ordered. The teen rushed forward, Maya clutching the countermeasure device. As they entered the core chamber, the infection's response was immediate and overwhelming. Every system in the room activated in defense. Environmental controls, maintenance robots, even the flooring itself becoming unstable beneath their feet. 3 minutes, Lucia called out, her voice tense, as their suit filters struggled against the increasing toxicity. Maya and James fought their way to the central interface, a physical access point that predated the fully automated system. The countermeasure needed to be connected directly to the quantum pathways. No wireless transmission would work against an entity that controlled the transmission networks themselves. As they worked, the others formed a defensive perimeter, fighting off maintenance drones repurposed as weapons. The Archon stood with them, using his knowledge of Thulian systems to predict the infection's tactical responses. "Almost there," Maya reported, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. "The quantum pathways are accepting the initial handshake protocol." A violent tremor shook the facility. Status displays showed cascade failures throughout the planetary network. The infection, sensing the threat, was sacrificing peripheral systems to concentrate its defense of the core. 2 minutes before critical exposure, Lucia warned. "It's rejecting the full deployment," Maya said, frustration evident in her voice. "It's created a quantum firewall I didn't anticipate." Ileana joined them at the interface. "What do we need?" "Direct neural input," James explained. "The countermeasure needs to adapt in real time to the infection's defenses. We programmed it to be versatile, but someone needs to guide it past the final barriers." "A Thulian neural implant would be ideal," Maya added. "But even inactive, they're too vulnerable to infection." "What about a human neural link?" Ileana asked, tapping the basic interface at her temple, the standard model used by humans for data access without full integration. Maya and James exchanged concerned glances. "It wasn't designed for this level of quantum interaction," James said carefully. "The feedback could cause permanent neurological damage. Or worse," Maya added quietly. Another tremor rocked the facility. Through the reinforced windows, they could see fires breaking out across the city as systems failed catastrophically. 1 minute 30 seconds, Lucia reported grimly. The Archon approached. His movements labored. "Allow me," he said. "My neural pathways are already configured for quantum interaction." "You'd be directly exposing yourself to the infection," Ileana objected, "without active implants for protection." "I am aware of the consequences," the Archon interrupted. "My people dismantled the predecessor's warnings about the dangers of complete technological integration. We adopted their quantum architecture without understanding its purpose. This is my responsibility to correct." Before anyone could stop him, the Archon connected a neural interface cable to the port at the base of his skull, a direct link to his biological nervous system, normally mediated by protective implants now deactivated. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The Archon's body convulsed as the raw quantum data flooded his neural pathways. But his compound eyes remained fixed on the interface, mandibles clicking in what might have been pain or concentration or both. "Countermeasure deploying," Maya reported, watching her instruments with wide eyes. "The firewall is adapting, but the Archon is. He's somehow matching its patterns, creating openings faster than it can close them." The Thulian leader's exoskeleton had begun to crack, golden fluid seeping from beneath as the neural overload damaged his physical form. Yet his consciousness, merged directly with the quantum network, continued to guide the countermeasure through the infection's defenses. 1 minute before critical exposure, Lucia announced, her voice tight with tension. "Countermeasure at 50% deployment," James reported. "Infection attempting to isolate affected sectors."